Morning. We are in Daf Kuf Lamed Vavam at base, middle of Daf at the two dots. Rabbi Yehuda Matir. Rabbi Yehuda says that you can make a bris even on androgynous on Shabbos. Amar Rav Shizvi, Amar Rav Chisda, Lo Lekol Amar Rabbi Yehuda androgynous Zacharu. Not in every matter did Rabbi Yehuda say that an androgynous, someone who has both genitalia, a male and a female genitalia, is zachar, that he counts as a zachar, a male. Shemata emekain be'erich and yarich, because if you say that in all matters, it would count as a male. So be'erich and yarich, so even in erichin, it should count as an erich. And erichin is is a concept where the Torah says, if somebody says, it is incumbent upon me to donate to the Beis HaMikdash an amount of value of this person, since people don't have, you can't put a number to that. So the Torah gave a generic number to people based on their being male or female and age brackets, and that's the erechim. So this androgynous should also have erechin. If Rabbi Yehuda holds that in all matters it counts as a male, so then it should have erechin like a male. Well, who says that it can't be the subject of an erechin? The Tanya, as we learned, hazachar v'lo tumtum. It says in the Torah in the when the Torah introduces and says that the statement that a person will give as an erech, it says v'haya erkecha hazachar. It will be your erech, your statement of this value. Hazachar miben esrim. Now hazachar is the hey is extra. It should say v'haya erkecha zachar or la zachar miben esrim, but hazachar is extra to tell you hazachar v'lo tumtum, not a tumtum. A tumtum is not is different than androgynous. Androgynous is someone who has both genitalia, and a tumtum is someone who doesn't have any recognizable genitalia. And as the Gemara says, really they're either a male or a female, and it just needs surgery to open up the whatever tissue is blocking or covering it in order to find out which what genitalia they have, and with the tumtum usually it's an akeva, it's a female, but it can be either, and it's just covered over. By androgynous, it could be that it's a separate gender besides for male or female. You have androgynous, and this is a mix, and it has both genitalia. So this hazachar means the male. It has to be a known and identifiable male, not a tumtum androgynous. Fine. So maybe hazachar tells me that it can't be included as a male, but maybe they can be included as a female. And then it says after that, and if she is a female, Zachar Vadai, Nekeva Vadais, the Torah tells us it has to be we have to be certain that there are either male or female and not a Tumtum and androgynous. And now Kufla Mazayin and Aleph. The Stam Sifra, and since that's the Sifra, the Sifra unattributed is Rabbi Yehuda. We know that the Chachamim, besides for the Mishnah, there were other forms of halachic brisa and midrash that were written by specific or are attributed to specific of the Chachamim, and Sifra, which is the halachic midrash on Vayikra, on Torah's Kohanim, that is, if it's unattributed, it's Rabbi Yehuda. And in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says that it's that the androgynous is obligated in the bris, and we do the bris even on Shabbos, meaning that it's a zachar, and yet in regards to erech, it does not count it as a zachar. It does not count it as a male. We have a brisa exactly like that. Hakol ksher makadesh, all can sanctify the red heifer water in order to the mechatas to put the ash on the water. Besides for a cheresh, a deaf mute, a shota, someone who's of impaired intelligence, and katan, and a minor. Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan opasel beishuv androgynous. Rabbi Yehuda says actually a minor can do it and it'll be kosher if it's done by a minor, but it has to be done by a male, and therefore a woman or even as someone who's androgynous cannot do it. Shmamina. So we see that Rabbi Yehuda, even though that in our Mishnah it says that it counts as a male, but not in all manners is it so. So why for a bris does it count that he is obligated in a bris, even though that he has both genitalia? Because it says, the Torah says the actual word kol zachar. It says you shall do a bris for all males. And to tell you, even if this is a androgynous. No, John. The bris would be specifically included, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that we would do it even on Shabbos, meaning that there's a total obligation for this bris. We would normally say, if not for Rabbi Yehuda, we'd say we would do the bris out of doubt. Maybe it's a male, and therefore we would do the bris out of doubt. But then we couldn't do it on Shabbos. So Rabbi Yehuda saying that we do it on Shabbos tells us that it's an absolute obligation. The Mishnah says, Misha Elish Shtei Tinokus. And for this coming Mishnah, we have either twins that were born right before and right after Shabbos came in, or right before and right after Shabbos ended, or just a male that had two brises to do from babies that were born a day apart. And the concept that we're getting into over here is when somebody intended to do a mitzvah, chishev lasas mitzvah, v'lo asa mitzvah, but he didn't end up doing the mitzvah by mistake. He messed up and he didn't do the mitzvah. Does it count enough as enough of a mitzvah to exempt him of some of the ramifications of the inadvertent sin? And we have two scenarios for that. We have a scenario where there actually wasn't a mitzvah. I just thought there was a mitzvah, and as such did the mitzvah. The second scenario is where actually there was a mitzvah. However, I messed up and I didn't do the mitzvah. I ended up doing something else instead. So we have two scenarios before us. Two babies that need a bris, one of them on Friday and one on Shabbos. And I end up doing the Shabbos bris on Friday, not having done the mitzvah because it's too early. And the Friday baby, I did on Shabbos, which is a mitzvah because the 9th day bris is a mitzvah because once the 8th day comes, even though the proper time to do is the 8th day, but if you can't or you didn't, the 9th day is the next day for mitzvah. It is a mitzvah, but that mitzvah does not supersede Shabbos. I shouldn't have done it on Shabbos, but I did. So it's a Torah b'dvar mitzvah. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done it on Shabbos, but I did do a mitzvah with it. So that's scenario one, where I ended up doing a mitzvah. Scenario two is where the babies are Shabbos and Sunday brises, and I mistakenly did the Sunday bris on Shabbos, and by in making a mistake of which baby is which, I did the Sunday bris on Shabbos, and that's too early, so it's not even a mitzvah. So I intended to do a mitzvah, but actually there was no mitzvah to be done with this baby, and so that's even worse because not only did I intend to do a mitzvah and not end up doing a mitzvah, but there was no mitzvah to be done. There wasn't one around. Somebody had two babies to do a bris for. Echad limam achar Shabbos, one to do the bris after Shabbos. Echad limam b'Shabbos, and one to do the bris on Shabbos. V'shachach, and he forgot which was which, made a mistake, and swapped them out. And Mullah so achar Shabbos, and he did the bris of the one that was supposed to be done on Sunday after Shabbos. He did it on Shabbos. So Chayiv, he has to bring a sin offering, because even though that he intended to do a mitzvah, it was a Tov b'dvar mitzvah. He made a mistake within a matter of mitzvah. And not only that, v'lo asa mitzvah, and in the end, actually didn't even do a mitzvah. And therefore,
this is assuming it's if somebody told you it's Shabbos bris, and you did the bris on Shabbos, then the next day you found out it wasn't a Shabbos bris, it should have been on Sunday, you have to bring a chatas. You're just the moil. You're relying on the father.
the man lied and said the baby was born.
He didn't lie. He didn't realize that. Yeah, it was Friday night at 10 o'clock. He didn't realize. That's not called Friday. He just didn't know. He got the date wrong. He gave you the wrong information.
No, that's not a ta. That's different. That could count as an unis or misasig. That's different. And we're talking about that it wasn't well known. There were twins. One was born 2 minutes before sunset, and one was born 38 minutes later, and the bris is Sunday, whatever later. Okay, so the bris one is supposed to be on Shabbos because it was born before sunset, and the other is supposed to be the next day, and he swapped them out. And the mistake was made, and they brought out the wrong baby.
So who has to bring the chatas? The father or
no? Whoever did the bris. Mm-hmm. The one who did the cutting caused the injury, which is prohibited on Shabbos. It was a non-mitzvah. Echad lama be'erev Shabbos, echad lama be'Shabbos. However, if it's the other way around, one is a Friday bris and one is a Shabbos bris. And he made a mistake and swapped them out. And there, the one done on Friday is wrong, but okay, you did it on a weekday. So there was no chatas offering. It's just that the baby needs and to have it redone after the time that it was done. We'll see a little bit about that soon. What the halacha is of a bris done before the 8th day. But the one done on Shabbos is actually a mitzvah, but it shouldn't have been done on Shabbos. Since it's not on the correct day, it should have waited till Sunday. But in fact, when he did it, it was a tov b'dvar mitzvah. It was a mistake to do this mitzvah, but in fact, the mitzvah was done. So Rabbi Eliezer says you do bring a sin offering. Rabbi Yeshua says you're exempt because if you made a mistake in doing a mitzvah and actually perform the mitzvah, so then you're exempt. I'm not sure, Kutners, I'm not sure what that question is. So Rav Huna Masni Chayev, Rabbi Yehuda Masni Pater. Rav Huna has the text of the Mishnah the way we have it. However, Rav Yehuda has the text of the Mishnah differently. In that, Rav Yehuda says that the first opinion in the bris that was late, that should have been Sunday, that was done on Shabbos, it says that you're exempt of doing, of bringing a chatas. So the Gemara explains. Rav Huna Masli Chayev Tanya. Rav Huna says you're obligated in a sin offering, like the Brisa says. Amar Shimon Elazar lenechaku Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer and Yeshua are not disagreeing. They're not disagreeing about this case where there was the one bris was supposed to be on Sunday and one on Shabbos, where everybody agrees. Everybody agrees the bris that should have been done on Sunday was done on Shabbos. That you're obligated in a sin offering because there you didn't even end up doing a mitzvah. So where's the machlokas? As our Mishnah writes it, Where there were two babies and one bris should have been on Friday and one should have been on Shabbos. And the Friday bris baby got mixed up and the bris was done on Shabbos. In that case, Rabbi Eliezer says, you still bring a sin offering on account of that you intended to do a mitzvah, but it shouldn't have been done on Shabbos. This is not supersede Shabbos, and so you did a transgression. Rabbi Yeshua exempts because, after all, true, you shouldn't have done it on Shabbos, but the mitzvah was performed. It was an effective mitzvah. And both compare it to the chatas offering that is brought for inadvertent idolatry. Rabbi Eliezer compares it to idolatry. Just as over there, the Torah says, do not do so. And we saw a couple of days ago that all chatases are learned from idolatry, and that they compare it to idolatry. Just as in idolatry, even though you didn't intend to do it, to sin, but you did. And so you bring a sin offering. So too, you didn't intend to break Shabbos, but you did. In as much as that it shouldn't have been done on Shabbos and it doesn't supersede Shabbos. So you did a chabura, you did a prohibited act on Shabbos. So you bring a sin offering. Rabbi Yeshua says no comparison. Hasam the lav mitzvah. Hacha mitzvah. By idolatry, there was no mitzvah being done. Here, in fact, you did do a mitzvah. The mitzvah was performed and effective. A bris was done. Should it have been done on Shabbos? No. Was a bris done? Yes. And therefore, you don't bring a sin offering. However, Rabbi Yehuda has a different text in our Mishnah, and he says, no, in the first case, where the bris should have been on Sunday, you're actually going to be exempt. The Tanya, as we learned, Amar Rabbi Meir, that Rabbi Meir says that the disagreement between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua was different. There is no disagreement in the place where the bris should have been on Friday, and the bris was done on Shabbos. And therefore, by doing the bris, you effectively perform the bris, because it's correct to do a bris after the 8th day if it wasn't done on the 8th day. And here, you perform the bris on a baby that should have been done on Friday and it was done on Shabbos. So effectively, the mitzvah was done. Both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua agree that indeed the mitzvah being done exempts you from a chatas offering, because even though the mitzvah shouldn't supersede, but it doesn't count as a chatasable transaction, a transgression, because after all, the mitzvah was done. So where is the machlokes? So Rabbi Meir is of the opinion the only place that there's even a disagreement of whether or not there's a chatas offering to be brought is in the case where the bris should have been on Sunday and it was done on Shabbos. He did the bris on the child that should have been have the bris done on Sunday and it was done on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer says, well, you have to bring a chatas offering because there was no mitzvah done. In that case, actually, it was prior to the bris was done prior to the 8th day, and there was no mitzvah. And in such a case, in fact, there is no performance of a mitzvah. And the way Rashi is saying it here, you'd have to redo the bris for that child. Now, it is the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch has a leniency in regards to that, but in general, the halacha, the accepted way is that they would do a hatafas dam bris for such a child. Rabbi Yeshua says that you're exempt. Why is Rabbi Yeshua exempted? And they both learn it from idolatry. Rabbi Eliezer Savar Rabbi Eliezer says it's like idolatry. The Torah said not to do it, and you did it, and so there's chatas to be brought. So to over here, the Torah did not want you to do this today. On Shabbos, you're not supposed to do it, and you did. So you bring a sin offering. You bring a chatas.
How about a
Shua, 1 second. Let me just finish this line. Rabbi Shua, asam le'tarid mitzvah. Rabbi Shua says, yeah, but it's different. There, you weren't trying to do a mitzvah. Hacha tarid b'mitzvah. Here, you were in the process and in the attempt to do a mitzvah, and because you thought today was the correct day of this baby's bris. And now it's true that you made a mistake about it, but your action and your attempt was to do a mitzvah. You weren't just doing something mundane. You weren't just doing something and taking a chance with idolatry. You were the purpose over here was the attempt to do a mitzvah. And even though it was early and therefore it doesn't count as a mitzvah, but nevertheless, you were in the act of doing a mitzvah. That's where the transgression happened, and therefore you don't bring a chametz.
How about it's a Friday bris and he does it b'mezid on Shabbos? Is that a mitzvah b'be beira, or is that what?
Yeah, that's not our case. We're not talking about someone who is intentionally breaking Shabbos. There's obviously no chatas offering for that. And here we're talking about because chatas only comes from inadvertent transgression. Here it's an inadvertent transgression, but
he did the mitzvah.
In the second case, there was an attempt. The second version, there was an attempt to do a mitzvah, or Rabbi Shua says where there was actually a mitzvah. Either way, you'd be exempt on account of it, of the mitzvah being done. This is unfortunately a somewhat common thing where parents who choose to circumcise their baby, but if they do so prior to leaving the hospital, it's done before the 8th day. And, maybe according to the Ramah, would count as a bris perhaps, but in this Gemara, clearly it's indicative that it does not count as a mitzvah. And indeed, many poskim hold that way. That's the general accepted rule. Tana Rabbi Chia says, Rabbi Meir that Rabbi Meir used to say that Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua didn't disagree. That if there was a mix-up between a baby that the bris should have been on Friday, and was done on Shabbos, and Shabbos was done on Friday, as opposed to the previous statement of Rabbi Meir, here he'd say that everybody agrees that if the bris should have been done on Friday and it was done on Shabbos instead, everybody agrees that you are obligated in a sin offering. But rather, the machlokas is only where the bris should have been on Sunday and he did on Shabbos, which is counterintuitive and different than our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that when the bris should have been on Friday and it was done on Shabbos, that's the more lenient case, because after all, there is a mitzvah being done. Where the bris should have been on Sunday, there is no mitzvah. However, Rabbi Chia's version of Rabbi Meir says the other way around, that where the bris was on should have been on Friday and it was on Shabbos, everybody would agree, even Rabbi Yeshua would agree that you bring a sin offering. And it's the other way around, where the bris should have been on Sunday and it was on Shabbos, that's where there's no chatas, according to Rabbi Yeshua. So Gemara says, wait, Hash Rabbi Yeshua Seifa, the look of mitzvah plater, Reisha the covered mitzvah mechayev. How can that be? If in the second case, where the bris should have been done on Sunday, and instead it was done on Shabbos, the leka mitzvah, where there is no mitzvah. So the simple reading would be is that there is no performance. You didn't succeed in doing a mitzvah, which would indicate that a bris done before the 8th day is not valid, doesn't count. The le'avid mitzvah mechayev. Yet he's sorry, the other way around. Where the bris should have been on Friday and the bris is done on Shabbos, where there is a mitzvah because after the 8th day it counts as a bris. Yet Rabbi Yeshua says you'd be chayiv. Rabbi Eliezer says you always chayiv. You always have to bring a sin offering. But even Rabbi Yeshua, who's lenient because you tried to do a mitzvah and did a mitzvah, yet he's going to say, well, you're obligated in bringing a sin offering. But in the case where you did it it should have been done on Sunday, and you did it on Friday, where there's no mitzvah. In effect, there is no mitzvah because it was too early. Yet there he's going to say you're exempt. So here the Gemara is going to come and say, actually, what happened is he did the bris on the Friday baby did the bris for the baby that should have been on Shabbos. He did it on Friday. The lenitna Shabbos litchas, meaning by the time Shabbos came in, there were no brises that needed to be done, because the bris that was done on Shabbos, that should have been on Shabbos, was done early, and the hatafa, the fixing of that bris, it's too late. You already did the bris, and the hatafa stam bris would only have to be done after Shabbos. It's not, that doesn't supersede Shabbos because the baby is already without a foreskin, and so that wouldn't supersede Shabbos. So Shabbos comes in, and you actually don't have a mitzvah to do. The Friday bris doesn't supersede Shabbos. The Shabbos bris can't be done because the baby's already been circumcised on Friday, and so you have no mitzvah to do. So when you got involved in doing a mitzvah on Shabbos, you actually had no mitzvah to do, and so it was in its entirety a mistake. You should not have been involved in this action at all. Whereas if the bris is supposed to be on one on Shabbos and one on Sunday, so there's no bris has been done incorrectly yet. And when you take the Sunday bris, the baby whose bris is supposed to be on Sunday, and you do it on Shabbos, actually you have a mitzvah to do. So there is something incumbent upon you to do, and you simply mixed up the babies and therefore didn't fulfill what your incumbency is. But you had something to do, and therefore you're exempt because there was an incumbent mitzvah upon you. Sefer nitna Shabbos luchas, so Shabbos actually had an incumbency of a mitzvah superseding the Shabbos right now. So you rightfully were involved in this mitzvah, simply mixed up the babies, and therefore never effectively did the mitzvah. So this is a very unique way of looking at this. In the first versions, we're looking at whether you did a mitzvah, your action. Did your action do a mitzvah or not? And in one opinion, if your action did a mitzvah, everybody would agree you're exempt. In one opinion, no, that even Rabbi Eliezer would not exempt you in that case. And Rabbi Shua would say, since you effectively did the mitzvah, you're exempt. In Rabbi Chia's version, we're not looking at whether you effectively did a mitzvah or not, but rather, should you have been involved in this at all? Was there an incumbency upon you? Did you have a mitzvah to do which supersedes Shabbos, which therefore your involvement was correct and you simply didn't effectively do it, but you had a reason to be involved, and Shabbos was superseded by the mitzvah. And therefore, if the bris was already, if it was a Friday bris that you're doing on Shabbos, right now you have no bris to do, and therefore you should be exempt. Therefore, you're obligated because Shabbos should not have been superseded. Says, well, actually, you have other brises to do. There are other babies. Just because I happen not to have one in front of me right now to do, Shabbos is superseded by brises. And so, of course, I should be involved in all of these cases. And because there are other babies that need a bris, just because I don't know about that baby doesn't mean that Shabbos isn't superseded by a bris of a baby. The concept is still there. So he says, yeah, but this moil had no mitzvah to be involved in any of it, and therefore, according to Rabbi Chia's version, he would not be. He would bring a sin offering on account of that he had no mitzvah at this point to do the bris. The next Mishnah is going to tell us what are the minimum dates for a bris. Generally, obviously, it's the 8th day. But there's sometimes that you cannot do it on the 8th day. You can only do it on the 9th day. That's when a baby is born between sunset and nightfall, because that's bein hashmashas, and we don't know whether the baby was already born on the previous day, was still born on the previous day, or it's already the next day. And so therefore, well, technically it would still be the 8th day, but we don't know, and it may be the 9th day. Maybe the baby was really halachically born on the previous day, but we can't do the bris out of doubt. Maybe that would still be the 7th day. So we have to do it on the following day, which we're calling the 9th day from when the baby may have been born. And then there's, if that happened to be a Friday night, so then I can't do it on Friday because maybe Friday is the 7th day. And I can't do it on Shabbos because maybe that's the 9th day and not the 8th day, and so it doesn't supersede Shabbos. And so I can only do it on Sunday. So that would be a 10th day. Sometimes I can't do it on that day either if that day is Yontif. So then it would be on the 11th day. I would have to do it Monday. And if it's a 2-day Yontif, such as Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah, or as in Chutzlar, it's where we have all our Yontifs are 2 days. So then the baby would end up being done on the bris would be done on the 12th day. So that's the Mishnah. So katan nima l'shmoina l'tisha l'asara l'achadasa l'yud beis l'pachas l'yisem. The minimum date for a bris is at least the 8th day, but maybe 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th day. No more, unless it's postponed for health or something. But the minimum can only be 8 through 12. No less, and obviously you can never do it earlier, meaning in a typical case, we did have before we saw a baby that is converted, and the bris could be on that day, even if it's before the 8th day. Haketza. Kedarka l'shmona. Typical case, the 8th day. Nela ben hashmashis, it was in twilight. So, nima l'tisha. Then the bris is on the 9th day, as we explained. Ben hashmashis l'erev Shabbos, if it's twilight of Friday night. Nima l'asara, then it would have to be on Sunday, which is the 10th day. Yontif l'cha Shabbos, if Sunday is a Yontif, so it's on Monday, which is the 11th day. Nima l'chadosa. Beis Yom Shor Rosh Hashanah, if it's a 2-day Yontif. And in Eretz Yisrael, that's only on Rosh Hashanah, 2-day Yontif, or outside of Eretz Yisrael, every Yontif. Nima l'shnei masa. Then it's the bris is on the 12th day, which would be on Tuesday morning. Katan achayla emaylin esachia. Then the Mishnah tells us that actually there are some times that you don't do the bris until even later than that, on account of that the baby is unhealthy. So Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel says Choltzasa Chama. If the baby has a fever, which we call a Kollel aguf, not just a localized ailment, but the entire body is ailing, such as a fever. So Nesele Kol Zayin Lavrasa, he needs 7 full days for healing. And so there the halacha would be is that instead of doing the bris on the 8th day, we do it on the 8th day from the ailment. Does it have to be if the fever broke on Tuesday at 2 p.m.? Do we need 7 24-hour periods? And so it would be the next Tuesday after 2 p.m. You couldn't do it Tuesday morning. Whereas typically in regards to bris and counting 7 days, we go from, it doesn't need 7 24-hour periods. So if the baby was born 1 minute before the end of the day on Tuesday, you can do the bris Tuesday morning, even though you don't have 7 24-hour periods. It's not the 8th day in moment to moment, but rather it's the 8th day because the first day, that 1 minute of Tuesday counts as Tuesday. Wednesday is already the 2nd day. What about for a convalescing baby from an ailment? So Tashemad, the Tani Luda taught Yom Avrasa came of. Well, the Bryce's text that the Gemara is bringing is that Luda said the day of healing is the day like the day of birth. So my lab, wouldn't you say what he means is you don't need from moment to moment, because if a baby born in the afternoon, you can still do a bris in the morning on that 8th day. So too for healing. So the Gemara says, look, what Luda actually was saying is that healing is stricter than the day of birth. For healing, you don't need 24 hours. You need 7 full 24-hour periods, and this is a halacha. If a baby does have an ailment that is Kollel aguf, not a localized ailment, but something that the baby is not well, something that affects the entire body, the bris would then be 7 days from healing, or the 8th day from healing, 7 full 24-hour periods. Now the Gemara is going to teach the concept that we saw earlier about going back on Shabbos for tzitzin hama'akvin, or little fringes that cover and invalidate the bris that you have to go back and fix. So elehin tzitzin hama'akvin, and there are different opinions as to what the meaning of this mission is. We're going to go with Rashi. Elehin tzitzin hama'akvin. These are the fringes that cover part of the glands and invalidate the bris. Therefore invalidate the bris, and it has to be done. Basar, flesh, meaning the shaft skin, which is the foreskin. Hachofes rova atara, which covers the majority of the ridge that is the step up for the glands. Ve'ena oichel betruma, and such a child that it has tzitzin hama'akvin, these fringes that cover the majority of that ridge, they don't eat teruma. In other words, that they are the bris is invalid enough that even if they're a kohen, they may not eat teruma on account of that they're uncircumcised. V'maya bal basar, and if really their bris was done correctly and there's nothing covering they don't have any foreskin covering the glands. However, they are heavy, and therefore the fat pushes the shaft skin over the atara, and it looks like they are not properly circumcised. So they fix it not on account of that they halachically have to fix it, but just because it looks bad. It looks like they are uncircumcised. Another halacha of bris is mol v'lo parak ilu mol. If somebody did mila, which is removing the foreskin, which is the outer layer skin, and it's similar to the shaft skin, but covers the glands, that's the mila. And beneath that is a membrane, which creates the under layer of the flap. And that membrane is it's not really a skin and doesn't need to be removed in the same way as a foreskin needs to, but it does have to be peeled back so that the glans is completely uncovered. If somebody did mila, somebody did the first part, which is the removal of the foreskin, v'lo para, but not pull back the membrane. It says if the mila wasn't done, it doesn't count. Amar Avina, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba Amar Rab Abasa Achefes Revgova Shalatar. When the Mishnah says that if the majority of the ridge is covered, it doesn't mean the majority of the ridge necessarily in total area. But even if it's the majority of the height, it doesn't have to be also the majority of the width of the circumference of the ridge itself. And if it was heavy set, and therefore that covered that would push the shaft skin, and it looks like he has foreskin covering his glans, it would be he should fix it so it doesn't look bad. Amar Shmuel, katan amasur b'basar, roinei sikos mashem eskashem v'nira mol ein etzarach lamo. So how do you check it to see whether or not it needs to be fixed? So if he's a minor, we would see that when he gets hard, meaning that the penis is erect, so therefore it stretches, and we see whether then the glans is uncovered. So if it looks like he has been circumcised, at that point, you does not need a fixing. It does not need to fix it. But if not, he needs another bris and it needs to be fixed. But Masnita Tana, we have a brisa that teaches, as a result, as an adult, it says it in the inverse. He says that a minor that as a minor that you see You check it also with when he gets hard. If he doesn't look circumcised, you have to fix it. If not, you don't have to fix it. So we have a contradiction. One says if he looks circumcised, meaning it has to be positive, it has to be look completely circumcised, versus the second brisa which says if he doesn't look uncircumcised. If he looks uncircumcised, then you have to fix it. So what's the distinction between the two? Where it's he looks circumcised but not completely circumcised. So you can see that the circumcision was done, but it doesn't look so like it was done completely or properly. There, in the first version, you still have to fix it. In the second version, you do not. Malva para. So in our mission, it said that it gave us the last part of the bris, which is the second part of the bris, which is the removal of the foreskin or peeling it back. Now the Gemara is going to tell us what brachas we say for a bris. The one who does the bris itself, who does the circumcision, says a bracha, typical beginning, and then Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos of Tzivanu al Hamilah, who commanded us and sanctified us and commanded us with the mitzvah of circumcision. Avi ben, and the father of the child, and if there is no father or child, then the representative of Beis Din, who is obligated to do the bris on behalf of the father. To bring him into the covenant of Avram Avinu. And the people that are there, besides for answering Amen, also respond, just as he entered the bris, so too shall he enter Torah, chuppah, and good deeds. And the one who says the blessing over the bris, Omer, he says, again, the typical beginning of a bracha, and then he says, Asher Kidash Yidid Mi Beten, who sanctified the beloved one from birth. So Rashi says that means Yitzchak. Tues says that means Abraham. V'chok b'she'ero sam, and a statute he placed in his flesh. Tues says that's Yitzchak. V'tze'etzav chasam b'os bris kodesh, and his descendants were also sealed in that sign of the Holy Covenant. Tues says that's Yaakov, his descendants. Al Kain, and therefore, B'schar Zos, in the merit of this, Kel Chai, the living God, Chel Keinu, who is our portion. We are the portion of Hashem, and Hashem is our portion. This is the relationship we have in this covenant. Tzureinu is our rock, the one who forms us. Tzavei lahatza yedidu she'ereinu mishachas. Command that our beloved ones that our flesh and blood be saved from destruction. And the merit or for the purpose of his this covenant, which is placed within our flesh. Baruch atah Hashem koretz habris, blessed you Hashem, who cuts this covenant, who affirms and makes this covenant. Hamolas hagerim, somebody does a bris for a convert. So Omer Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos of Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, typical beginning. Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos of Tzivanu al Milah. You say the bracha for Milah. There are some that say the text Lamulas Hagerim, that to do a bris for a convert. And the one who says a blessing over the wine, he says Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos of Tzivanu, commanded us and sanctified us with this mitzvah Lamulas Hagerim, to circumcise the convert. Ulahatif me'em dambris, and to allow for a blood of the covenant to come forth from him. Because if not for the blood of the covenant, heaven and earth would not survive. Shenema, for it says, if not for my covenant, day and night, then the statutes of heaven and earth, meaning the laws of nature of heaven and earth, lo samti, I would not place. Baruch atah Hashem koretz habris, blessed are you Hashem, who makes the covenant, who cuts the covenant. Hamalas havadim, one who circumcises servants. Omer Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvos of Tzivanu al Milah, says the bracha for the bris, again, the covenant of the obligation and the sanctification of the mitzvah of Mila. And the one who says the bracha over the cup of wine, so the one who says the bracha over the mitzvah is going to say, you commanded us and sanctified us with the mitzvah of circumcising the servants and to allow the blood of the covenant to drip forth from them. If not for the covenant, the words of the statutes of the nature of heaven and earth would not last. As it says in the verse, I would not place the statutes, I would not make the statutes of heaven and earth, the laws of nature, if the covenant were not there day and night. Baruch atah Hashem kuris abris, blessed you Hashem, who makes this covenant with us. With this we complete the 19th chapter of Shabbos, Rabbi Lezer the Mila, and we shall come back to you.